My name is Francisca. I am 78 years old, and for almost 2 decades, I have been battling a problem that I am sure many of you are familiar with: uncontrolled blood sugar levels. I remember those early hours when I could barely open my eyes. My body seemed to disobey me. Fatigue enveloped me even before the day began. I struggled to focus, often troubled by headaches, and sometimes my vision blurred as if I were looking through fogged glass. The doctor repeated the same thing at every appointment. Habits need to change. Perhaps consider insulin. I nodded, but inside me, fears tormented. I didn't want to become dependent on injections and spend the remaining years among medicines. Honestly, I felt cornered, as if I had no choice. But one day, during a casual conversation in the park, my acquaintance said something that seemed almost amusing at the time. He asked, "What if we try a teaspoon of it on the sly?" I smiled politely and dismissed it, but that night the thought haunted me. A spoon of what and why on the sly. This is where it all began. At first, I expected nothing, accustomed to disappointments, but what happened next left me speechless. In this video, I want to tell you what I took, how I did it, how the changes became noticeable, and most importantly, what science says about this small but powerful habit. If you are also looking for a natural way to improve your condition and control your sugar levels, stay with me. Before we continue, tell me how old you are and from which city or country you are watching me. Write in the comments. I would be interested to know. Before I discovered this simple teaspoon on a string, each day was an endless struggle with my own body. I lived in a closed circle that seemed to have no way out. Every morning I woke up with thirst, unquenchable, as if I had crossed a desert at night. I drank glass after glass, yet still felt dryness in my mouth, parched lips, and an overwhelming need to drink more. Fatigue lingered. I could sleep 8, sometimes 9 hours, but woke up feeling unrested. My body no longer obeyed as before. My legs felt heavy, my mind sluggish. Sometimes I just sat on the bed and thought about how to survive another day like this. I remember the infections. What used to be easy suddenly became a serious problem. A small wound on my foot or slight discomfort in my bladder turned into prolonged troubles for weeks. The doctor explained to me that with high sugar levels, the body struggles more with protection. But understanding did not ease the disappointment. Every time I was ill, it felt like I was sinking even lower. And there was the glucometer, a device that was supposed to inform about my condition but became a source of constant anxiety. Every time it was a roulette. Sometimes the readings were pleasing, but sometimes unpredictably high, even when I tried to eat right. And when the numbers rose to critical levels, something inside me broke. I felt guilt as if I had let myself down, and at the same time I was engulfed by fear. The fear of losing control, the fear of becoming dependent on others. The fear of losing independence had always been with me, but most of all, I feared becoming blind. Often I would stop to look at old family photographs again and thought, what if one day I can't see them? These anxious thoughts came to me more often than I would like to admit. At doctor's appointments, the word insulin became increasingly insistent. At first, it was just a gentle warning, a distant threat. Over time, persistent recommendations emerged. If we didn't improve the situation, insulin treatment would have to begin. I didn't want that. Not out of unwillingness to follow medical instructions, but because I felt that crossing this line would mean I could never go back. I understood that with insulin, I would become even more dependent on routines, syringes, constant measurements, and frequent doctor visits. This feeling of losing a part of myself scared me. But even worse than the symptoms and the numbers on the display was the loss of control over my own life. I felt as if I had ceased to be the master of my body. It seemed that pills, numbers on the screen, and the doctor's instructions were deciding for me. I lived with this submission, believing that perhaps it was a payment for age, that this is how everyone ends. But deep down, I still hoped it wasn't so. I didn't want to just exist. I aspired to a full life, to feel good, free, clear, and not fear falls. There's no guilt in sleeping, not waking up at 3 in the morning with a pounding heart. And so, amidst this gray routine, a new opportunity appeared. The idea was so simple that it seemed naive. Just 1 teaspoon, another routine. Something natural, without side effects, without needles and chemicals. At that moment, I didn't know if it would work, but I decided it was worth a try, because I didn't want to live like this anymore. I wanted to give my body a second chance. What exactly did I try and why did it resonate with me? Life has a strange way of throwing answers when you least expect them. That morning I wasn't thinking about sugar, doctors, or miraculous solutions. I simply went to the park to take a walk and stretch my legs. In recent days I had felt sluggish, somewhat out of place, and I knew that if I stayed at home, the couch would catch me again. I sat on a bench in the sunlight, surrounded by silence. An elderly man sat down nearby, radiating warm energy from the very first moment. His face was wrinkled, but his gaze was lively. We didn't talk at first, just enjoyed the silence. Then, as if we had known each other for a lifetime, he began to speak. "Do you know what I do every morning without fail?" he asked, not looking at me. I replied, "What?" "I drink 1 teaspoon," he answered. "That's it. Just 1 spoon on an empty stomach. It's been almost a year." I froze in silence. I didn't know whether to laugh or ask questions. "What?" I finally asked. He smiled and said that this is probably something you already have at home in the kitchen. It costs less than a pack of pills, but it carries ancient wisdom. He shared that since he started doing this, his glucose levels have noticeably improved. He felt lighter and more energetic. His indicators stabilized. Even his digestion improved. "It's not magic," he explained, "but when something so simple brings results, no other proof is needed." I returned home with this conversation swirling in my mind. I remembered how many times I spent money on expensive products promising miracles, only to be disappointed. I recalled the bottles of supplements collecting dust in the drawer, and now, sitting on a bench, an ordinary man speaks of a spoon on an empty stomach as if it were gold. Then, I had a question. Do I really need just 1 teaspoon a day? Perhaps I was complicating what could actually be simple. I didn't want to act hastily. I sat down at the computer and began to research. I didn't rely on blogs and trendy videos, but turned to reliable sources. I reviewed scientific studies, medical articles, and the experiences of other elderly people. To my surprise, I came across many similar stories. People began taking this natural remedy and noticed real improvements, not only in terms of sugar, but also in energy levels, digestion, and even mood. I reviewed a study among people with high sugar levels. Improvements appeared within a few weeks. This is an unofficial treatment method and does not replace traditional medications, but as a supplement, it seems reasonable. Interestingly, this remedy is not new. It has been used for generations in ancient cultures, traditional medicine, and family recipes in our grandmother's kitchens. It is not in capsules or expensive bottles. It is on supermarket shelves and perhaps already in your cupboard. Then I decided to try. Cautiously, yes, with respect, but with new faith. Because for the first time in a long time, curiosity awakened in me, not based on promises of miracles. Just 1 teaspoon on an empty stomach every morning. And perhaps it can really change something. What does science say about this natural ingredient? Before I tell you what I've started taking, I want you to know, I'm not a doctor. I am an ordinary person, like you, who has suffered for many years from high blood sugar. But I am curious. I don't like to consume something without understanding how it works. So, before trying this spoon on an empty stomach, I calmly studied everything. And what I learned surprised me. The ingredient is apple cider vinegar. Perhaps for you it's just a kitchen salad dressing. That's true. But it's also one of the most studied natural remedies for controlling blood sugar levels. The first study I came across was conducted at an American university. People with insulin resistance were given 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar diluted in water before consuming carbohydrates. The result was impressive. Glucose levels after meals were significantly lower compared to those who did not take vinegar. Another study published in a clinical nutrition journal examined adults with type 2 diabetes. Taking apple cider vinegar before bed led to a reduction in fasting glucose levels the next morning. It wasn't a miraculous drop, but the effect was consistent. How does it work? The explanation is quite simple. Acetic acid in apple cider vinegar slows down the digestion of carbohydrates in the stomach, preventing sugar from quickly entering the bloodstream. As a result, the body has more time to process it, and blood sugar levels do not spike sharply after a hearty meal. Furthermore, some studies suggest that vinegar improves insulin sensitivity, meaning cells begin to respond better to the hormone and more effectively absorb glucose. This is especially relevant as many of us lose sensitivity to insulin with age. However, it is important to note that apple cider vinegar is not a panacea. It does not replace medications, does not cure diabetes, and should not be seen as the only solution. However, this can become a natural addition, especially for those who are already trying to lead a healthier lifestyle, actively engage in sports, and monitor their health. In other words, if you are already taking care of yourself, this spoonful of vinegar can be an additional incentive to achieve good results. How does vinegar relate to medication therapy? Medications for treating type 2 prediabetes have various mechanisms of action. Some of them help the body produce more insulin. Others reduce sugar release from the liver, and some improve tissue response to insulin. This is quite effective, but can sometimes be accompanied by side effects such as stomach discomfort, nausea, weight gain, and the risk of hypoglycemia. In contrast, apple cider vinegar, if taken wisely and in moderation, usually does not cause serious side effects. The main thing is to dilute it. Never drink vinegar undiluted, as it can lead to enamel damage or stomach irritation. And do not forget that the body's reaction is individual for everyone. For some, vinegar will be more beneficial. For others, less so. In my case, as well as for many people I have spoken with, it has become a true support. Therefore, I will emphasize once again, do not expect miracles. Expect consistency, stability, and importantly, one more small step towards a life that is more stable, conscious, and less dependent on the numbers on the glucometer. From the 1st to the 5th day, I observed the initial results and doubts. On the 1st day, when I prepared a glass of apple cider vinegar, I didn't know what to expect. I have read a lot and seen various stories, but theory is one thing, and practice is quite another. Taste, habit, and fear seemed ridiculous. I poured warm water, added a teaspoon of organic unfiltered apple cider vinegar, the kind with the mother, stirred it carefully, and for a few seconds just watched. The smell was sharp. Warning. What I was about to drink was clearly not reminiscent of sweet lemonade. I told myself it was not for pleasure, but for the benefit of my body. I drank it in one gulp. The taste was sour, sharp, almost prickly. It was noticeable, but bearable. My stomach didn't cramp as I feared. There was no nausea, just a slight burning in my throat that quickly passed. After a few minutes, I had already forgotten the taste. On that 1st day, I measured my blood sugar before taking the vinegar. It was high, as usual. After taking it, I waited about 40 minutes and measured again. It had decreased a little, yes, but I did not rejoice, as it could have been a coincidence or a result of the previous walk. The 2nd day passed similarly. I performed the same ritual again, woke up, drank vinegar with warm water, waited, and measured. This time the decrease was more noticeable. Not as sharp, of course, but enough to catch my attention. And then thoughts began to arise. What if this really works? Or am I just deceiving myself and it's only a placebo effect? Doubts emerged. I didn't want to be fooled by my desires, but at the same time, I began to notice interesting things. First of all, in the mornings I started to feel a surge of energy. That deep morning slump gradually disappeared. I felt clarity, as if something inside me had been turned on. Secondly, my craving for sweets significantly decreased, which surprised me. I used to always seek something sweet after lunch, cookies, ripe fruits, anything. But in those days, the desire didn't arise. I could calmly finish my meal and do without dessert, feeling no anxiety. Moreover, although I found no complete explanation, my stomach felt lighter. This bloating that tormented me disappeared for a few hours. Digestion became more comfortable and quiet. Of course, I had doubts. On the 4th day, my sugar level increased slightly. Not critical, but enough to make me doubt again. Perhaps it doesn't work. Maybe I'm too early to rejoice. But I decided to continue. I promised myself that I would try for at least 30 days. I understood that the body needs time. There are no miracles. The main thing is consistency. On the 5th day, the indicators returned to normal. Along with them, my mood improved. I couldn't yet claim that everything was working perfectly, but I felt that something new had begun. A new habit, a new attitude towards my health, and, most importantly, a new form of control. For someone like me, this was already a small victory. From the 6th to the 15th day, the changes became more noticeable. Around the 6th day, something shifted within me. It was not only about sugar, but also how I woke up, moved, and looked at myself in the mirror. Every morning I repeated the same ritual. He got up, prepared warm water, added a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar, drank it calmly, and waited. Then he took the glucometer, sighed deeply, and measured his sugar level. It was surprising that the numbers began to move in one direction. They no longer jumped around like before and were under control. For the first time in many years, the values gradually decreased, without changes in medications, without new schemes or interventions. It was a soft but steady decline. Each day was a little better than the previous one, and importantly, I felt good. Digestion, for example, became completely different. Previously, almost any food caused heaviness, gas, and lethargy. Now I noticed that I can eat and remain active without collapsing on the couch and without endless heaviness. I also started sleeping better. This surprised me the most. For a long time, I woke up in the middle of the night for no apparent reason, with a racing pulse or a stream of thoughts. Now, however, I slept soundly, without awakenings. My body seemed to have calmed down. I woke up refreshed. On the 10th day, I had an appointment with the doctor. With some anxiety, I told him what I was doing and waited for his response. I expected him to advise against it, calling it foolish and risky. Instead, he frowned and then smiled. "That's interesting," he said. "There are studies that confirm this. If this helps you and has no side effects, continue. But remember to keep control and don't stop the rest." This calmed me. It means I'm not being reckless. I'm trying a natural option that is justified and, importantly, works for me. And it was precisely during these days, between the 6th and 15th, that another feeling of strength awakened within me. For years, I felt my body slipping away from me. I merely reacted to circumstances, extinguished fires, and followed orders. But now I understood that I was capable of making conscious decisions. I could help my body without waiting for doctor's appointments or emergencies. It was not about abandoning medicine or ignoring specialists' advice. It was about something deeper, regaining control over my life, to feel again that my voice matters and that I am not doomed. I realized that there are things I can do myself, and that was priceless. It was not just about improving my glucose levels. I was in the process of growing my self-esteem. Energy emerged, along with the desire to go outside, take a walk, and once again, be a part of life. On the 15th day, I looked at myself in the mirror. I saw not just a face or body, not numbers on a scale. I saw an expression, a spark in the eyes that had once dimmed but were now rekindling. It all started with one simple teaspoon that I took on an empty stomach every morning. My name is Francisca. I am 78 years old, and for almost 20 years, I have fought daily against what many of you know: uncontrolled blood sugar levels. I remember the morning hours when it was hard for me to open my eyes. My body wouldn't obey. I felt tired even before the day began. I couldn't concentrate, often had headaches, and from time to time my vision blurred as if I were looking through fogged glass. Every time at the doctor's appointment, he repeated the same thing. I needed to adjust my habits. Perhaps it was time to consider insulin. I nodded, but inside me something terrible was happening. I didn't want to depend on injections and spend the rest of my life among medicines. The truth was that I felt trapped, as if I had no other choice. One day, during a casual conversation in the park, a friend said something that sounded almost absurd at the time. "What if we try a teaspoon on an empty stomach?" I smiled politely and didn't think much of it, but that night I couldn't shake the thoughts about it. A spoonful of what? And why on an empty stomach? That's how it all began. At first, I did not expect anything special. I was used to disappointments. But what happened next honestly left me speechless. In this video, I want to tell you what I took, how I did it, what changes I began to notice, and, most importantly, what science says about this small but powerful habit. And if you are also looking for a natural way to improve your well-being and control your sugar levels without fear and complications, stay with me. Before we continue, I would like to know about you. How old are you? And from which city or country are you watching me? About 20 days after starting my morning routine with a teaspoon on an empty stomach, I felt better, and the numbers on the glucometer continued to pleasantly surprise me. But I understood that I could not move forward without an open conversation with someone who knows my medical history. I called my doctor and made an appointment. We have known each other for many years. She was a woman with a clear mind and a straightforward approach, yet very humane.